Alright, so we got another Aralim chapter up next. I do want to get these into some overlays for you guys at some point so that I can just quickly swap screens and it'll be ready to go. But we'll have to take a look at that next time or eventually. Just adjust this up a little bit. Get our map open here. And then we want Aralim. Curious if any of you guys are listening to the podcast at all, so you'll have to let me know eventually if you guys are tuning in for this, or if you've seen it on any other platforms. I've got it. I've checked it on Spotify myself, but I know that it's the site I'm using is sending it to a few different spots, so be sure to check it out if you're interested. All right, looks like we're on Aralim chapter 3. Gotta keep myself hydrated here. All right. Awesome. Here we go. All right. Aralim 3, 16th of the 6th moon, 1478. Actually, we're going to redo that. We're going to do we're going to adjust our title and everything here. I got to remember to do this each time when we're changing our segments here. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so let's dive on back in here. I'll just do the title again for the podcast. So, Aralim 3, 16th of the 6th moon, years since Orish, 1478. Aralim was sunburnt, sweaty, and exhausted when at last a rainy day forced them to put into shore and hide the ship amongst the cliffs of the Great Isle. Captain Ango was in a foul mood and told Aralim he should sleep the whole day so they could work all the next day. This seemed ridiculous to Aralim and a little unkind. How could the captain blame him for the weather when such things were clearly under the control of someone much further along the path? He went to find Mirish and was surprised to find her out in the warm rain, with her feet hanging off the deck. "What are you doing, Jan?" Aralim asked, sitting down next to her with his legs crossed. She smiled, though her dirty beige tunic was soaking. "I like the rain," she said. "If you make it far on the path, perhaps you'll be able to create it yourself," Aralim said. "Wouldn't that be something?" Mirish smiled. "I'd like to make food too," she said, "for my friends." "As you continue down the path, though," Aralim told her, "there is so much more significant than friends. Besides, we must all find our own way to survive on the path and learn from it." Mirish nodded. "Sometimes I wish the path was gentler," she confessed. "Do you miss your parents?" Aralim paused, caught off guard by the question. "I used to miss my family, but the longer I walk the path, the more I realized I probably shouldn't." The rain was quiet as the eye of the storm approached, though Aralim's own dark grey robes were beginning to dampen. They had an almost metallic gleam to them, which kept the water off rather well. Mirish was trembling, and it took Aralim a moment to realize she was crying. Aralim put his arm around her, and they watched quietly the rain on the water. "I never really knew my parents," she said, but I don't know what's ahead either. What if I never move along the path?" "Have you ever noticed that your feet only face forward?" He paused. It's because we're not meant to turn back once we're walking ahead. She sighed and said no more. A couple hours later they turned in for the evening. Drenched and in possession of only the clothes on their backs, they stripped down to their small clothes and hid beneath blankets, Aralim on the bottom bunk and Mirish on the top. Aralim couldn't fall asleep with the tossing of the boat in the storm, but after a while he could hear Mirish making sleepy sounds, so he didn't start up any conversation. He couldn't even read because of the storm. At one point, when a wave caught the ship in a strong twist, Aralim's staff clattered to the ground with a bang. He leapt out of bed to stop it from rolling around, but was surprised when Mirish didn't react at all. She was still sound asleep. At some point during the middle of the night, Aralim was awoken by a voice. It took him a moment to realize that Mirish was talking, though the words were half mumbled. They also didn't seem to make any sense. Though she spoke as one phrase, she said, "4, sunset, crowns, blood." Those were all the words that Aralim could make out, though she continued fretting in her sleep. Then suddenly she cried out, and Aralim jumped out of bed. "Are you all right?" he asked. "What?" Mirish asked. She was sitting up in the top bunk, gripping the sides against the swang of the boat. She seemed to have no idea what he was talking about. "You yelled, and were talking in your sleep before that." Maybe it was just the storm and her emotional thoughts before. "I had a dream," she said. "It was very odd." "Really?" he asked. "Do you remember anything? You said a few words." "I don't remember any of it. What did I say?" she asked. He repeated it to her, and she shrugged. "It doesn't mean anything to me. All that I remember is the face of a dark-haired lady with a thin knife strapped to her leg, and I saw some islands on the horizon, and some bodies lying by a river." "Quick, before it fades, let's write it down," he said. He began writing what she had said on a scrap of parchment from his bag. He handed her a piece as well, along with a chunk of charcoal. Think you can draw the woman you saw?" "I can try," Mirish said. "Sometimes in Lantern Town we draw things on buildings." Graffiti? At her age? She was small, even for an 11-year-old, but she was scribbling away, so he didn't say anything. "Something like this," she said a minute later, and showed him. It was a good drawing, something an adult might make, so he nodded happily. "Do you think we're supposed to find her?" Mirish asked. Aralim considered it. "It might just be a dream," he said, "but if it's not, maybe we should. It's unlikely someone further along the path would try finding us." "How do you know she's further along the path, though?" "Well, she's not dreaming of us," Aralim said. Mirish nodded. "I wonder if it was just a dream," she muttered. "I don't usually remember my dreams." "Well, if you dream something like this again, try to remember it," he told her. The storm picked up again, and they had to put away their papers. Aralim climbed back into bed, and Mirish laid back down. For a while they just listened to one another's breathing, until she said, "Everything in my life always seems to involve death. Now I'm seeing bodies in my dreams and saying things like blood in my sleep." "Think about this, though," Aralim said. "You're following the path in truth now. I once had a lord invite me to stay in his castle, just because I was a walker of the path." They fell asleep to the sound of the rain. All right. So that was Aralim chapter 3.